Hello and welcome to the Game Dev London podcast. I'm your host, Marek, and you can refer to me as he, him. And today I'm going to be talking with a good friend of mine, a composer called Jeremy. He works as part of a three-man team called Audio Creatures, and they've done some awesome stuff for cinematics, video games, a bunch of stuff. And so we're going to be diving into what that's been like for him and working in the team, as well as just generally his journey into becoming a composer and working as a freelancer in what is a pretty awesome but pretty tricky industry to work in. So, hello, Jeremy.
Hey Marek, thanks for
Hello,
having me.
hello. Thanks for being coming onto the pod. So, yeah, I think was that everything that you're kind of doing at the moment? Is there anything extra that you're doing on top of? I mean, we met during the master's course that we're doing, so I guess you're coming to the tail end of that as well, aren't you?
Yeah, totally. I'm right now about to start my final major project, and yeah, aside a lot of stuff going on with audio creatures, which is awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah, also a lot to do at the minute.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. So how long have you been with Audio Creatures then?
So it's probably a little bit of a longer story, but it kind of started pretty much 3 years ago already. Marcus and I met here on a local game developers hang called Game Creators Hangout in Berlin, which happens like every first Thursday of every month. It's just like one local thing. You go to a pub, meet some game developers, and we've met there. We had a good chat, and he had a crazy time himself, needed some help, and I started freelancing for him. And apparently he liked my work, everything went well, and we kept on going for the years. And then after some point, he had a bigger project and asked me, hey, okay, so I again want you to work with me, but well, I already have Nick on my team. Why are you not also becoming one part of Audio Creatures? And
Awesome.
yeah, that was like also about a year ago.
Nice one. So you were freelancing for kind of 2 years and then you became kind of an official member of the team like a year ago, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Awesome. Nice. So that's the kind of the last 3 years then. But I guess I want to sort of start a bit further back. We're gonna go sort of what were your what was your kind of way in, I guess, because a lot of composers, a lot of well, not just in music, but in so many parts of game dev, so many people have that kind of moment or that inspiration that kind of got them started on their journey into whatever area of game dev they're doing right now. I was wondering if you have something kind of maybe similar that you found, uh, or is it just sort of you just kind of fell into it? I don't know.
Um, it's actually a little bit of a tricky question to answer because I think I generally was like always into soundtracks, even as a child. I remember reading books while or reading the Lord of the Rings while listening to the Lord of the Rings soundtrack and Harry Potter, and I absolutely fell in love with the music. But I never really saw myself as a composer or thought that I would be musical enough to do it. I started actually quite late with music around age of 14 when a friend asked, hey, we have a band, we don't have a bass player. Do you want to play bass in our band? And I joined in and yeah, I kept on going with the band, started playing guitar, but still never really considered to do film music because I didn't think myself being so much of a musical genius. It really just happened on later, playing for another band, and the guitarist asking me to download any DAW, any software to record my demos. And for the first time, I got myself Logic and I came in touch with virtual instruments, with virtual orchestra instruments, and I started playing around a little bit with them and figured, hey, this actually makes so much more fun than playing metalcore. Like I think I'm gonna do this for a while now, just stick here, play with the orchestral instruments. But yeah.
Awesome. So you kind of transitioned away then, I guess, from the sort of the live playing and moved like closer and further into kind of composing. And were you kind of did you start? You said you listened and fell in love with, as so many people have done, into the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. Um, would you say you kind of started with kind of film in mind?
Uh, Definitely. Yeah, I think one of the first things I've tried to recreate in Logic with the pre-installed software instruments was the theme from Requiem for a Dream. The na da 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 na da da da.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think it generally really started with film soundtracks and also tried to recreate those big themes through the for free digital instruments you had available there. And yeah, kind of from that point on, try to teach me a little bit of composing by through learning by doing.
yeah, awesome. So yeah, so because I didn't really come across a DAW until university. So I knew I wanted to write music, and I loved video games. I knew I wanted to try and do something with the two. But it wasn't until I was 18 and had the opportunity at university with the facilities that they had to actually try and start writing music. Um, but I was in more of like an educational kind of setting, whereas you said you would just sort of manage to just learn by doing and just see what happens. Probably write some stuff that's not great, but have a lot of fun in the process.
It's funny though because I think we were about the same age discovering DAWs. Then I think I was also about 18. It was my last year of high school playing in that band, and yeah, but yeah, the first demos. I think I still have an old computer back at my parents' place where some of the things are still on the hard drive, but I'm not sure if I would like to listen to them now anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe one day you can go back and see how far you've come, because the stuff you're writing now I think's amazing. Like, I've heard your stuff. Like, we've known each other for 2 years now. Um I remember just being so impressed by how professional your stuff sounds. So the fact that you say you came to music quite late, or at least you came to composing quite late, um, and you're just like doing all this awesome stuff with it, I think it's really, really cool. So just the next question I had then, we're talking about kind of your journey into everything. I know you kind of relocated to Berlin, right? So you're living there currently. And I guess for the kind of the listeners at home, I'm just wondering, how big of a an impact do you think moving to a major city has had on your kind of ability to get into the industry? Do you think it's super important, or do you think people can still find work when maybe they don't live in a major city and they might live at home or something with parents?
I think it really just depends on what you're making of the situation. Like I think it generally always is helpful to be at a major spot where a lot of the stuff happens, the events and so on going on. Yeah, j- just where the industry is, like being somewhere where the industry is generally helpful, I think. But then again, it also depends on what you make of the situation. Like I can speak for myself. I was also struggling in the beginning, like probably all of us trying to find your first paid gigs as a freelancer and stuff. I tried to force myself out of the flat to go to these events myself. Always felt like a little bit too shy, a little bit too nervous, and it definitely helped though because like I think you never know what might happen for me at some point. I kind of met Marcus and he we kept on working and he's like the best client I've had so far in my life, and it generally just happened through one of those game creator hangouts here in Berlin where I at that point tried to keep going like for a year now, like once every month. But then back to the question, it also depends on what you make of the situation. Like, I actually know another composer living on the countryside. He's from my hometown, which is like about 1 hour south of Munich. And well, it's like a 10,000 people town. There's not really much of an industry or something, but he's still working for a big German TV channel, ProSieben, and Galileo. It's like one big series here. Um, but I remember him saying he also always tries to drive to Munich or where the industry is. So I think if you're not living in a big city, you still have to kind of compensate meeting the industry through traveling or being absolutely excellent at online networking and try to be there. But I think most importantly is that you know to somehow approach the industry.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. Sorry, I think that's such an important point, especially the online stuff that you mentioned, because obviously the pandemic we've just been through, when everyone went online, I think people started to realize the potential that um, I mean, the internet's always been there, and it's always been people have always used it. Well, not always, but last 20 whatever years, 30 years. Um, but when everyone did have to go online, there just became this. I feel like a whole new branch of kind of working. Um, Maybe not for composers because we're so used to being on our own in a room on the computer anyway. Um, but in terms of networking and meeting communities and starting communities online, that I think that just blew up. And
Absolutely. And it was so important also during Corona. Like I remember just during the first wave of COVID, um there happened a few game jams like Stay Safe game jam or whatever, and you just had this awesome community in Discord and everything. And like back then nobody still knew what was going on, like was Corona, like first wave, everybody was anxious. And yeah, it was a great way to stay in touch, but also stay connected with the game devs and everything, like while doing a game jam.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that also shows that networking is way like past the age of a couple of people in like suits and walking around giving each other their business card in this like stuffy room. It's actually there's so much more to networking than that, than just showing people what you can do. It's cultivating relationships and friendships with other people through things like game jams or Discord servers and just being involved in communities like that. Posting on social media, which I know a lot of people struggle with. Some people it seems to be quite natural for them, which is great. I know for myself personally, I have to really think about having to post online, and I have to kind of set a routine. And if I spend a day or two not planning the routine, it's like I have to restart the whole thing again. But it just shows that there are so many ways to network, beyond just being in the right place geographically, because I think that's something that can put a lot of people off. Obviously, it is a big help. Like you hear about all these big composers, they all live in LA, right? Because that's where the industry is. And so all the big like top composers and top kind of people in their industry live in LA. But there is so much out there still for people just starting out, for people lower down the kind of the ladder, or however you want to describe it. And I think that's really important to remember, and that there is opportunity out there for everyone. You just have to go and look for it.
Mhm. Absolutely. I also just have to think of Hideo Gidnadit here, the composer of Chernobyl, Joker, and Battlefield 5 it was. And
Mm.
yeah, actually, surprisingly, she's not living in LA, but also living and working from here in Berlin. I think she's yeah. But yeah, from what I've heard, she's also like traveling a lot, and of course traveling a lot to the States, to LA and stuff. So probably like my friend from my hometown for the who's like living 1 hour away from Munich and who always has to travel somewhere else, but probably the same for her too when working for these big triple A American titles.
Yeah, definitely. It's just getting yourself seen, isn't it? It's like the way I always think of it is there are going to be probably 1,001 people that will write better music than I do. But if I'm in the right place and I have a good relationship with the person I'm working with, they're going to choose that over someone that they've never seen that's sort of behind a wall of text, right?
You write amazing music though.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So do you.
No, of course. I mean, I know your music as well as you know mine, but yeah,
Oh,
I
well,
just
that
know
was,
like
yeah.
some music I really like yours more than I did my own. But yeah, but back to the point, you're right about that. Like I think people generally try to rather choose people they know and they l generally like to choose as a working partner to work with because it is so much more like I mean you I think you can probably have the best quality, but if you're like an awful narcissistic person or whatever, like nobody would like to work with you because after all, this is also a team sport, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry if you just heard a bang there. That's my dog who's asleep, and I think he just hit his head against the crate. Anyway, so uh, but yeah, it's about making sure that you're reliable and that you're approachable. And if you're consistent with what you're creating, whether that's music or art or anything in the field, as long as you're kind of consistent with it and are always open to learning and improving yourself, whilst also having this kind of positive, reliable, outward approach, then I think it can only go well, right? It will go well at different paces for different people, depending on other factors, but you just got to approach it with the right mindset and keep kind of moving with it. And I think that's something, particularly with being a freelancer, is tricky, isn't it? Because um, we're sort of working for ourselves, right? We are our own boss a lot of the time, and it's about having that consistency and the discipline to kind of just keep going, right? So for example, this week, so it's Friday today, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was able to get 4 or 5 hours done on music per day. And then, but then, as well as doing other things that I couldn't, like social media and all this other stuff. But yesterday, I had a really, like, I was just really tired. I had a really bad day. I only got like an hour or two done, and I saw, but I was able to go. Okay, you know what? I can take a step back and I can recharge and then go again tomorrow. And I think that's the great thing about freelancing. But there's a fine balance you've got to reach, right? Because it can go one or two ways. You can burn out or you can do nothing. And you got to kind of find the in between, find the middle ground.
I couldn't agree more. I didn't had it yesterday, but the day before yesterday, that I came out quite a lot of stress and I felt like damn it, there's still so much more to come and I really should start working now, but I actually chose not to, and not for the reason that I just want to lie down on the couch behind me for all day, but there was so much other things to also carry about and that are also important. Like for me, it was like making a dentist appointment, like taking care of some bills I had to pay for electricity and stuff, like also finally respond to some friends' messages who just sent me that long voice message a couple days ago, which I didn't find the time to listen and respond already. Like these are also important things, and you at some point you need to make room to well take care about your own life that is aside from the work. Like for me it was
Yeah.
2 days ago, but one really
Yeah.
has to.
No, I think there's a real because there's that sort of the work ethic culture, right? And it's almost like work yourself into the ground, burn yourself out. If you're not working hard enough, someone will be working harder than you. You're a terrible person if you're not doing 20 hours a day or something, and that's just not sustainable. And I think especially if you're working by yourself, right? You're doing all this stuff. You're your own marketer. You're your own manager of your time. You're your own dietitian. You're your own fitness coach or whatever it is. Like you're having to take care of every other part of your life on top of your professional career, right? And I guess that kind of leads me on a bit to audio creatures in a bit more detail now, because obviously, as we've already alluded to, you're a 3-person team, and I was just wondering how's that been working with a team and being in that kind of collaborative environment where you're able to bounce ideas off each other, have meetings, maybe have disagreements and agreements, and kind of all kind of improving yourselves and audio creatures as a brand as well. How have you found that experience in working as a team?
Honestly, pretty great. Just from that point on, that we audio guys, composers, sound designers, whatever, we used to stick around in our studio, all isolated from the outer world. So actually working in a team and like being there in Discord, having video catch-ups. We actually have like gaming nights too with our team, and it just generally probably also helps your mental health to to stay social through that kind of way. But yeah, other benefits are like we well, it's no, I've been working with our sound designer on one project already. Usually it's like everybody's having one or another project that maybe another person is working on or not. But yeah, it's always good to ask the others for feedback, basically for quality assurance. If you're not sure about your composition or stuff, I just can shoot it like in our channel. Hey guys, could you just check it out? Maybe give me some mix feedback. And it actually really was helpful. We've had it a couple days ago for one cinematic, and I listened to my music so often that I couldn't hear like one frequency really cutting through the mix totally in the tonal range. So you probably wouldn't have heard the voice over anymore. And Marcus was like, hey, that one frequency. And that probably was good before sending it to the client. And they were like, hey, we can't hear anything of that is being talked. So
Yeah, I think that collaborative side is so cool and is so and I think it should be encouraged even for people who are solo composers or solo artists, solo creators, um, working freelance by themselves. Is there are so many communities out there where you can ask for feedback, and it's important not to be in just sort of an echo chamber just with yourself. Um, and also, yeah, if you have that kind of that feedback stop before you send something to a client, then you could save yourself a world of pain, right? Because yeah, like you've just said, like there's something you didn't notice, but Marcus spotted it and you were able to fix it, and the client didn't know, right? The client didn't, and that's a great thing.
and the thing is, it was so obvious. Like it's just like after you getting used to your own music, like I did a side by side comparison, my old mix and the new mix, and like it was like this tone droning through the mix, and I was like, God damn, how the hell could I not hear that? But
Yeah,
yeah, it like you said, it's really always good to find yourself a community that you can ask for feedback, or just generally like stick around with. Like again, mental health is a big thing, and I think if you're like what we do, often not work in any office building or whatever, but stay in your home studio or wherever all alone, you definitely need people, somehow still need people around you, if it's writing with them or seeing them in real life. But yeah, it's
yeah, yeah,
important.
yeah, absolutely. And I guess going like staying on the topic of your team in Audio Creatures, so you main just seen as like the composer, or you just compose for Audio Creatures, or do you also do a bit of sound design? Or because I know you have a sound designer who's part of the team as well. But I was wondering, when you're with Audio Creatures, do you just do music or do you do anything else on top?
Um, I'm just thinking if there was so far I didn't do any sound design for audio collisions. I think there was once a situation where Marcus asked because Nick was also too busy with his other projects. But yeah, most of the time it's actually either producing or writing music. Although with Marcus, when Marcus and I work together, I often it works like he's writing the music and I produce it for him, like or I work on the arrangement.
Yeah.
But yeah, we actually also want to widen the service right now. We didn't had it so far, admittedly, for games, but we also do implementation through Wise and everything. Like Nick is working with Fmod, I'm working with Wise, and we also do the game implementation side. But
Yeah, and I guess that's something that I want to talk about in a bit more detail in a bit. All this sort of implementation and everything. So just to quickly kind of conclude on this part of the chat, so there's a lot of debate and a lot of talk about if you're a composer, you need to be able to sound design as well, especially if you're looking to get into kind of indie level projects because um, dev companies or one or two man dev teams that maybe can't afford. Sorry, there he goes again. You can't really afford to hire a composer and a sound designer. They just want one person, and I think there's a lot of debate about whether to focus on both or to really specialize on one over the other. And I don't know if you've got any particular thoughts on it or opinions on that compared to your own journey, maybe.
it's really hard to tell. From my own experience, I can say I started out doing both. Also, like my first couple of student games, like they obviously well, they could have asked a sound designer, but most of the time it was like, okay, Jeremy, he's the audio guy. He can do both music and sound design. So I did it for them. And this is actually also how Marcus and I met during Game Creators Hangout. We were talking about that, and I was asking Marcus if he does sound design, which he does not. And he said he literally has no other time as a composer. And then working with him, I saw why. Like, I admire Marcus for him that he started networking already age 16-year-old or so, but he had so many gigs going on, like composing gigs, that he didn't really had the need to learn sound design. So I think I think it's good to be able to do it in the beginning, but then after years enough, you might find yourself in a situation that you have enough composing gigs that you don't need to do it anymore or something. It is always a useful skill to have it by side if needed.
Yeah. I think that's kind of my opinions on it as well. I mean, my sound design, I've done a bit of sound design for one or two projects. Then not much, just sort of maybe a couple of footsteps, a couple of like power up sounds, a couple of spells and everything, which I've quite enjoyed doing it, but because it makes you think about it's a different process to writing music. It's a different creative process, especially if like a sound effect is maybe a second long, 2 seconds long. Um, Whereas instead of writing a 2.5 minute theme tune, you just focus on this kind of one thing and then it's done and you're on to the next. So it's like a completely different creative process. Um, but so yeah, I think it's good to have both. But but kind of have your end goal in mind and kind of start wherever you can finding ways to specialize or make it so that you only have to do the music if you find yourself in a position where you can negotiate that. But then sometimes I guess needs must and you just have to get on with it as well. And maybe just sort of learn on the job sometimes or kind of wing it and say that you'll do it and just get it done alongside the music.
And that's also absolutely fine. Like again, when you're starting out, it most likely will be an indie game team, and they often don't have enough money to hire two guys for you. So you somehow have to be capable to do both, and this is very likely to be in if you're starting out as a freelancer. So it definitely is a good skill to have then, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess So the next kind of thing I just wanted to talk about for a bit was the MA that you and I are both doing. But I just wanted to talk kind of how about your experience with maybe this MA in particular, and kind of how you do you think it's really essential to have an MA, or kind of a degree in music composition, or particularly for video games, or do you think, because I personally I think there are so many different pathways, and for me the masters was a really important choice. I think it's really benefited me because it's really taught me not only how to be a better composer, which is obviously kind of what you expect a degree to help with, but also to kind of just be more professional, I think, and kind of have that mindset of being professional, and that you're here to kind of work and here to make a living and a career out of music composition. So yeah, I was just wondering if you had any kind of ideas or any opinions on it.
Yeah, yeah. First, I couldn't agree more with the professionalism. Like, it's definitely helping there. Um, it is still a hard question to answer because there's, like you said earlier, so many pathways for guys finding their way to the industry. I'm I don't think you need to have it to make it in the industry, but it's absolutely helpful. Like for me, it generally came during COVID because I was starting out as a freelancer. There was not so much stuff to do, and where it really, the thing that really made me want to do the master's degree was I was in the process of an application with one bigger English game dev actually, and it was already about moving near Leeds and everything, and it was me and another guy. And after the interview, they told me like, hey, we're sorry, the other guy got it. Like, your music was all good, but the other guy had more experience working with game engines and with implementation, what I absolutely lacked back then. So I found the master's degree we're doing, and it was all about, creating interactive music systems and also learning wires and how to implement them to Unity. And just from that standpoint, I really felt like, okay, this is helpful to just have like one piece of paper telling them like, okay, I have this music, but I also know how to make it work to your game, and just to know everything about it. So
I think the implementation side of it has just been a revelation for me, because it's just, yeah, it's incredible, the because you kind of, when you talk about it on a surface level, it's obvious, right? It's like, oh well, when the player wants to go from this room into the next room, the music might change, or but there's so many more layers to it, and it's sort of endless. And I can see why people make entire careers out of just the implementation side as well, because um so much of the kind of interactivity can come from Wise or just from Fmod. um and and it's kind of made me think about how I write my music completely differently, because before I was just writing linear loops, right? So just writing 2-minute tracks that would perfectly loop, and they did all this awesome stuff, but they just kept going and going and going round and round. But something like an interactive score, you can randomize things, you can have modules that play. Some other modules you may never hear, depending on what the player's doing. Every time the player maybe respawns, they might hear a different type of soundtrack coming back because of the randomization and because of maybe the different paths they choose each time. And it just can go on and on and on and on. And it's really cool. I think for anyone looking to make a real impact, or have a real go at becoming an audio person in games in general, I think they can't overlook implementation. That has to be something that, in my opinion, I think it's more important than the sound design stuff. If you're wanting to be a composer, if you can show a dev team that you know how to implement, it's kind of like you're kind of speaking their language a bit more, because there's this kind of divide, isn't there? And there's so many stories about how developers never quite give us enough to kind of understand where they're coming from with the music they want. But if we can tell them, oh, well, we know how to implement it, it kind of bridges that gap a bit.
It's really I couldn't agree more about that. Like I don't know how you felt about it, but for me it always seemed like a little bit of witchcraft. Like because everything felt so seamless in games. Like okay, you definitely have changes in mood, but I could not tell when did it happen, how did it happen, how did they write the music that it just happened so seamlessly. But it is generally just incredibly helpful to know about these things, like
Yeah.
really just for also for how you approach your composition process. Like like you said, I was also just writing like linear loops before, but right now you're thinking more about like ABC systems. So I have this starting point going over into that, but I need like a little bridge in between, and then it can go either this way or that way. So yeah.
Yeah. And then things like the key that you're writing in or the tempo you're writing in, they become slightly more limited, I think, as well. If you're doing a linear loop, the harmony can go crazy. You can go wherever you want with it because it's always going to come back round. But you couldn't really do it as much with an interactive score, which is why. So for like, um, I think they did this in Red Dead Redemption, and they did it in Cyberpunk as well. Everything's just written in A minor. Like they've just kept it in A minor because that's the easiest key to kind of the most kind of universal key amongst all instruments as well, because A is, you know, the kind of the main note and everything. So it's kind of interesting how it shifts the process.
Yeah, yeah. I think they did it for The Witcher 3 too, that most of the soundtrack is written in D minor or something.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, that is also goddamn, I have to think of the feedback from university. Like I wrote in my commentary something like, yeah, I worked all in the same key and I feel a little bit guilty for that. And the feedback actually was the prof said like he didn't really recognize and he actually also didn't really care because it just felt like it was working smoothly, and sometimes easier solutions make the best result. And
Yeah.
yeah,
100% less is more with interactive music, because you have to be, it's what it's like with film music, right? There's this whole thing of if you can't hear the music, then the music's done a good job, right? If you don't notice it. And the same thing with interactivity. I mean, it depends what you're trying to get out of the game. It depends. There's so many genres out there. They all have different needs and whatever. But as a general rule, I think, yeah, keep that kind of stripped back, and then it's more about kind of textures and moods and making sure the system works correctly, rather than writing at every second just like an incredibly complex composition from a musical standpoint, but instead making the interactivity the complex system, right?
I,
um yeah.
I think that quote was from Hans Zimmer saying something like, well, you don't want music to be too attention grabbing, like, try to see it as a conversation and having a guy that always wants to like speak in between and like always shut up. It's annoying. I think that's the same with music for media, actually, like both film and games, like, it's more like the invisible actor. It's there, but also not there. You just feel it, but you possibly don't actively think about it.
Yeah, and I think that it's so tricky to get that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think so just then quickly going back, so you're, because obviously you're working on all these projects as a professional, but you also have for the last 2 years been doing this course. And so I'm just wondering how that's been for you to be working alongside learning, right? Because it's kind of, we're always trying to develop ourselves, and it's about, so yeah, I'm just wondering how you found that. Has it been kind of quite a lot of added stress, or have you felt like it's kind of you've been able to work and do the course at the same time?
I I do have to give big credits to our university because they were the most chill dudes I could imagine. Like I I reached out to them multiple times, starting as a full-time student, going to part-time, and then still asking like, hey, there's too much stuff going on. can I get an extension and something like it is stressful sometimes, like like it is as a freelancer, like you have times where it's not so much workload and then just everything comes all at once and you're like and yeah, I really can just speak for our university, but they were very understandable and very chill about giving extensions.
Yeah,
But
no, yeah, because I think they said, didn't they, that the course is based around, like, the whole point of the course is to help you find employment afterwards. So if you're finding employment during the course, it would be kind of counterintuitive for them to tell you to stop that work.
that's the only truth. I remember talking with another composer friend from one of the UK's biggest music colleges, and him also struggling with having too much freelancing going on while finishing his master's. And his tutor's response was that he should always put his studies first, which is absolutely not true. I think it's like the opposite way around. Like you only do university to get gigs later on. So if you got them while studying already, that's the end goal after all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to take those opportunities where you can, and I think sort of that kind of say yes now, think about it later kind of thing with opportunities like that. It's like if someone comes to you with something and it's what you want to be doing, then go for it and worry about everything after that.
Because I think that it still happens with every gig. Everybody's well, after the first yay, there's also a lot of worries then
Yeah.
when you're sitting
Oh
at
no.
a blank piece of paper.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, so that concludes another episode of the Game Dev London podcast. I've been your host, Marek, and you can find me online at MJ Smagala on Twitter. I'm also running a Liverpool-based game dev meet. So if you're UK or Northwest based, you can find us at Liverpool GDM on Twitter as well. And yeah, what about yourself, Jeremy? Where can people go to find you, find out more about you, and find out more about Audio Creatures as well?
So you can find me on my socials under my name, Jeremy Verbose. But that's a German name and probably a little bit difficult. Audio Creatures is on all the social platforms. Like you find us on Twitter, you find us on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Not so sure about Facebook, but yeah.
All right, awesome. So yeah, thanks to everyone who tuned in, and be sure to check out gamedev.london for the latest updates. Otherwise, we'll see you here same time next week. All right, see you later. Thank you very much, Jeremy.